Welcome to Studio Talks.
After Hours.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Studio Talks After Hours. I'm your host, Ember DeBoer, and this week our other co-host, Grace Tuthill, actually won't be joining us. She's up at Cobb Mountain Art and Ecology Project, working on 2 wood fires. They're running both kilns. It's a big event. There's a lot of people there now that we're getting on the outskirts of COVID, and they're starting to really ramp up how much the ceramics community talks to each other and works together. So she's out there helping them this weekend, and she can't be here with us. But I'm not alone. I have our guest, Emoni. She is joining us this evening, and I would love to talk about you. So say hello.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome. Welcome back to Dwell Point itself.
Thank you.
This woman right here is re-entering the art making process, and I'm excited to see what you start making again. Not that you ever really stopped, right?
Yeah.
But
it's a process. I'm getting back up on the wave, so it'll be good.
We go through the like heavy making stage, the talking about the art and doing other things with it, and then going back to making again.
Yeah.
At least I do that too. So absolutely. Well, I wanted to let everyone know a little bit about who you are and where you come from. So let's start with the basics. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up, childhood was in Chicago. My early preteen years, I moved over to Sacramento area. I've been here ever since, so
that's why we get
years.
along. That's why we get along. Midwest girls, right?
Midwest
Beautiful.
girls.
And so you moved to Sacramento. So you went to high school here in Sacramento.
Yes.
Okay. And so when did your interest in art really begin?
My interest in art began in kindergarten. I actually remember how I used to do these horribly crude little drawings in kindergarten. Then I had a friend who was like, for a kindergartner, was a really great artist, and she showed me how to draw people, and I was like, oh.
That was
it. That was it. And then I fell in love with drawing. I didn't really start taking it seriously until high school, though. I went to Folsom High, great art program there. The art instructors were great, super encouraging, really pushed me, and I just kind of, got a real feel for what being an actual creative was.
Yeah, so. That's lovely. And you also just revealed to me that you used to be a theater kid, and I'm putting it out there.
A creative of many mediums over here. So
as you should be. I just thought that was kind of cool. I used to do the set building, but had no esteem for doing anything on stage. Absolutely.
Oh, so fun.
So I know we have talked about it a little bit, but in high school you started doing more representative or kind of artwork, portraits and stuff like that, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I did a lot of portraits. They were always of women, almost always. I think in my high school career of around 50 pieces, I think I did one of a man, and it was because I had to, because it was part of the project.
Right.
But I did a lot of portraits of women. I really just liked capturing everything that was in a face, and whether it was it had a whole bunch of context and meaning behind everything wasn't really what it was about at that point. It was just really being able to capture the essence of another person and replicate that, make it my own, and playing around with color and seeing what I could do with color and still make it look realistic and believable. And
that's something we really have in common, and I've always felt akin to, because I did a whole series of self-portraits because my art teacher was the cheapest model you have is you, and so I just would sit in front of a mirror because I wanted to be live. I didn't want to use photos, and that there's a big difference between a model and a photo, and
100%.
It totally changes the way you represent something. So yeah, I don't know. When I see some of your work, I see that influence even in your digital work too. I think you do some of that stuff and kind of incorporate those feminine aspects or that womanly form too.
Yeah, of course.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, okay, so what did you do after high school?
So after high school, it very, very much pushed me into college. That was just kind of the community that I was in. I started off as an art major. Won't even lie, didn't have the best experience. My first art teacher was
cruel.
Okay. she was never all that. It really wasn't that she was that hard on me. And granted, she was hard on me, but I oftentimes agreed with the criticisms that she had with my work. It was the way that she treated the other artists, and it was almost discouraging towards the other artists, and I really didn't like that. And that being my first experience kind of with the greater art world, it was really
like the upper division academic art world.
Yeah, and
which
really off-putting.
Will attest that it's a strange place. It's different than what you do now, which is you operate more often in the existing professional art world really than the academic art world. So I wanted to have you on part of that reason, because I feel like you have way more experience actually making work, making money off your work, interacting with. Are you part of the Black Artists Fund?
I am.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you have more of a professional aspect and like kind of veered away from the academic art career. Now, did it happen in that moment? Was that the class you took and you were like, I don't know if college academic art is my scene, or did you continue trying?
I mean, I continued trying. There were years in between that. Right before COVID happened, I actually had gone back to school and like switched over to an art major again. And I actually loved it. I loved my classes. My professors were awesome. They were incredible. And I really, that was kind of what led me back into the process of like, okay, I do want to be creative. Like, this is what I want to do. Like, that was just a bad experience. This is a great, community. It's a great world. And so then after COVID hit, and it was like, well, I'm not going to go back to classes. Like, if they're not in person, and I can't do an art class not in person.
What a rough time to choose.
Of course. So I just kind of started exploring. I wanted to keep creating. I wanted to keep connecting with creatives. I mean, I got addicted after those like couple great classes. And so I just kind of found my way, and I ended up branching off into this, already professional, separate from academic world. It just ended up that way.
So was Dwell Point a large part of you stepping into the Sacramento art scene? Was there a step between this, like, because, I kind of came to Dwell Point in the middle of the pandemic and got my studio and, in December. And so we're talking about like maybe like an 8 to 10 month span here between like, college falling out because of COVID. And so was there a step in between that's like, okay, well, I loved going to art class, but COVID ruined this for me, and like, was there a step in between that, or was it almost immediately Dwell Point?
There was absolutely a step in between that. I had already had a small Instagram following, and I connected with other local artists in Sacramento. Brandon Gastineau, our friend that near and dear to me. We had become friends on Instagram, and he was setting up a mural. I was invited to come help him set that mural up, met him, we became friends right off the bat. He was very generous in introducing me to people, in telling me about Dwell Point. He was the one that told me about it. He encouraged me to come and try my luck out here, and so that's where it started, and that's when it started to kind of feel real. Like, oh wow,
we'll give him brownie points. He's very good at that. He's very sweet and
very generous with success and all of that. And
we had a similar, like, we knew each other, and kind of, I followed your artwork on Instagram for a while before we ever got to actually meet in person, and I was keeping tabs on the work that you were doing for quite a while, and we actually got to meet in person with our Sip and Create nights, which recommend anyone who likes baking and has close art friends do Sip and Create nights, which is like a much better version of going to like Wine and Create, like those wine and paint nights, but like do it with your friends in private, like like don't make the same painting, everyone, like like make some weird stuff, but those were really great times and a really great way to meet you guys, and I'm very grateful that you guys invited me. So cool. We would not be here today. Actually happened. So, and who knows if I would have actually ended up at Dwell Point if it were not for you and Brandon as well. So I have you guys to thank for that.
Well, you're welcome.
Absolutely. And so let's go. I mean, I'm kind of curious. So, okay, you come to Dwell Point, and I've seen some of your artwork. I really loved the piece that was up at the Doko Shopping Center. That was cool, on the big billboard. A little envy, a little like, because it looks really gorgeous up there. Was that a digital piece or was that a painting?
So that was a digital piece. There were 2 different pieces that went up for Doko. One of them was one that was a little bit older. I'm assuming you were referring to the newer one with the black background and
Yeah.
the sun.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that one was also a digital piece. I was asked to make that one for the Unseen Heroes event that I did for Black History Month. And so I created that new piece. I actually wasn't asked to create it. I just decided I wanted to make something new, you know, debut something, right? And I had a lot of help from Faith from the Black Artist Fund, and she gave me the opportunity to also showcase my work at DOCO for Black History Month as well, which was an incredibly crazy cool opportunity.
So cool.
So
I mean, it also just looks beautiful up there, right?
Thank
and you're
you.
amongst other people who are doing really good artwork, which is always an honor.
Yeah,
so.
well, and it was absolutely crazy. I mean, I was still only, not even a full year, still only months into my, professional artist career, quote unquote, and then I was alongside some other really awesome and like pretty well established artists with that opportunity. So that was a huge turning point for me. That made me like, wow, I can really do this.
Yeah,
like, this is real.
A little self-belief, a little visibility goes a long way as a creator, right? So, and I also wanted to let everyone know like the mediums you work in, because that's got to be quintessential to like your development as an artist, right?
Course,
so your very first love medium was
colored pencil. Yeah,
I didn't know
shocker,
that. Yeah, I actually didn't know that, and also I feel like most people hate colored pencil as a medium.
Yes, no, I loved colored pencil. That was something that I fell in love with in high school. I guess you could say first love was like graphite, but I didn't feel like I could be fully expressive, and so I started using colored pencil, Prismacolor, shout out. But just the way, I was doing a lot of portraits, and the way that you can layer colors and play with them and just make them blend together in this way that still like really highlights all of them. I was obsessed.
I said a lot of artists hate colored pencil, but I really mean I have no patience for it.
What I meant by that
was I actually have no patience for colored pencil, because it is a slow layering process, so you get to this really beautiful blended kind of. I think of your self-portrait. There's a self-portrait of you, and it's. I think that's my favorite art piece of yours.
Thank you.
In the video, I will drop what it looks like, and I'll drop it on the Instagram too, because it is exactly. But it's a gorgeous drawing, and I noticed it was in colored pencil immediately, and that's part of what I think. It has soft color, but there's real technique in that piece, and it shows your level of study for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I mean that for about 4 years, all of high school, that was all I did, and I have graduated onto exploring other mediums now. I was very resistant to painting in high school. I still did, but I liked kind of the tediousness, the relationship that I built with the work when it took so long with colored pencil. But now I'm much more impatient. And I like paint because I can just slap it on and it's something automatically.
And the more you come up with ideas, the more infuriating it is for me that I can't get them all out. When I go through periods of not having access to make sculpture, because obviously there's a lot of tools involved, I get all these ideas, and then by the time I actually get access, I can only make a handful of them. Yeah. Because they take so much time. So obviously you always have colored pencil around, but that impatient element is definitely a part of it. So
100%. I've absolutely lost the patience to do colored pencil. I try to do it, and the other thing I like with paint is that there's so much spontaneity that comes with it. When it's colored pencil, you've got to be methodical, you've got to be technical with it, otherwise it's going to look like a scribbly, muddy mess. Whereas with paint, I don't like that, let me just paint over it. Let me just let it change and flow as I'm going.
And mastering that painterly quality is a part of what, makes your style, makes your, the values. That's something I always felt distant from in painting, that I always struggled with. I could never do paintings in a painterly way. I struggled to lean into brushstrokes in a way that helped the composition, but also looked really intentional. I
still struggle. I mean, I tend to paint with acrylic, and I've definitely had an art teacher tell me the way that I paint with acrylic is sinful, because I so badly want it to be blended and smoothly, and I mix it with water, and you're not supposed to do that with acrylic paint. But I do it because that's the texture I want. And to me, I'm like, hey, at the end of the day, if it comes out how I want it to come out, it comes out how I want it to come out. But I definitely know that I also struggle with letting the brush strokes add to the composition. I want everything to be so smooth, and just not how it goes with paint. You have to really let go of some things, I feel like.
Sometimes I feel overwhelmed by the way you can utilize, especially acrylic, because acrylic is a fast medium. When people are like, why don't you do oil? And same issue with the colored pencils.
Impatience.
Yeah. And also the methodical layering that
Yeah.
comes with that is something that it's already hard enough for me to get layering down with acrylic. And yeah, technically you're not supposed to water it down, but a lot of like, I've had at least 2 professors tell me, they're like, the only reason they say that is because they don't know how long acrylic will last when you water it down. Unlike oil is so archival and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are we only creating things for them to exist for a long period of time? I was like, isn't that kind of like part of the problem right now? So, kind of a trivial, like, paint how you paint, I guess.
Yeah,
But
100%.
when did you get into digital medium?
So I got into digital medium probably, I think it would be near the end of 2019. Is when I really started to explore. I'm self-taught in that medium. It's still not my favorite. I love doing it because it's so convenient, so quick and easy, but I am self-taught, so there's another element of patience with it because there's so much troubleshooting that happens when I'm trying to create something, and it is always frustrating when you have an image in your mind and you can't just get it out immediately.
Right. A different kind of craftiness. Like, when you have a paintbrush, you, like, understand its physical properties, and if you can't get to do what you want it to do, it's like, okay, I have fingers, and I have, like, the end of the paintbrush, and there's, like, an ingenuity thing that's, like, it's still problem-solving, but it's in a way that, like, deals with your physical.
Yeah.
And then, but, like, it's literally computer technical. So when you're like, I just want it to be purple, I want the curve to happen here, and the computer just will not comply.
Do it.
And you know, if you do it in a weird way, that later it'll cause problems with the layering. That's something I've always found that I struggle with. Yeah,
there's just a lot of, I feel like, for lack of a better term, consequence that can come with, like, mistakes in digital medium, because you know, oh, I did this thing that's beautiful, but it's on the wrong freaking layer, damn it. And then you just have to start all over. You have to try and make it work. And then there's definitely a craft to it. And it's something I've not yet mastered, but we're trying.
An extended period of punishment for not doing the layers just how.
Exactly.
It's a moment of forethought about what you want it to look like in the end, which not a lot of 2D artists actually do that, or are forced to do it at least, right? Yeah. Like my sculptures, when I'm layering, the way I make my sculptures, I try to make them high craft, and there is like an end point I'm attempting to reach, and I have to have I have to know how all the layers are going to add up for that thing to be the way it needs to be. Yeah. And that's similar to digital, except it's a matter of knowing the tools I need to do to get it done.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. It's just a different element that you have to think of. It's a different thing that you're implementing to get to that point.
Like you said, if you don't like something in acrylic, just paint over it.
Just paint over it.
If there's something I don't like about my sculpture, like theoretically, I can just attach something to it.
Yeah, attach something else, take it off.
But if the transition's not good, then, and that's a big thing I always say is difficult, is transition in artwork is really hard to master with sculpture, because in sculpture you use a lot of different mediums all together, and if it doesn't look like they were compiled intentionally, I almost feel like it screams in sculpture, like very loud, right? Yeah. So I also wanted to talk about the concepts in your work. You talk about the feminine form and highlighting that through your high school work, but what have you been concentrating on? We've talked about, you and me in private have talked about how before you were, developing who you wanted to be as an artist a bit. And I was wondering if you talk about that.
Yeah, well, in my more recent work, before this second wave that I'm on right now, the last wave that I was on, it was a lot about identity, who I wanted to be, who I am, who other people were seeing me as. I had a very small series that I did that hopefully I'll get back to eventually, called Boxes. A lot of, commentary on being an African American, being, a woman, and all of the social shackles that can come with. And so a lot of, commentary, or I don't even want to say commentary, but exploration rather. Yeah. It's not a set conversation, but it's me figuring out what I'm trying to say.
Exploring the labels you've either assigned to yourself or other people assigned to you, and how you relate to them.
Yeah, well, the labels that I've identified with, whether those were labels I consensually want to identify with or not, and just trying to figure out how much I, my true authentic self actually identifies with those things. And how those identities have impacted my path or the way that I've treated myself or gone about just my life in general.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Taking our labels and the ones that we do or do not actually are consciously aware that we hold, the ones that we hold ourselves to and judge ourselves based off of, and then how that affects how we see ourselves. Yeah. I think that self-punishment thing that you just said is the big one.
100%. I mean, talking about the first piece I did in that small series, box number 1, that was commentary on African Americans.
Did you name them all like in order?
Yeah.
That's lovely.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Box number 1 was on being an African American, and obviously I don't hate my heritage. Like that is a huge part of, it has affected my life in a lot of different ways. But realizing, especially with 2020 and all of the everything that happened with the Black Lives Matter and George Floyd and just all of the trauma porn, literally, of Black lives in the Black community, and realizing how much I was holding on to that feeling of being oppressed and being marginalized and feeling like the world was out to get me, because that was all I was seeing. And, I even talked about the DOCO opportunity and the Unseen Heroes opportunity. And while I'm so grateful for those, having that showcase in a Black History Month thing where it's, I'm being seen as a Black artist instead of just a good artist.
And you're also being asked to represent Black people in a large way, which also has to be very, I don't want to say trivialize it, but very strange at a time where the image of Black people was being discussed, not just by, not amongst themselves, but by society as a whole and your place in the world. That has to be daunting, to be put in the position of representing an entire group of people.
It absolutely is. And when I created the piece that I did for Unseen Heroes called Intuition, I kind of went back to my roots in a way where I didn't plan, I in a way added some commentary to it, but I didn't go into the imagery with any type of message in it. I just wanted a beautiful Black woman to be highlighted. I didn't want there to have to be a context of societal shackles. I didn't want her being Black to be the topic. I just wanted to be this is pretty art. This is pretty art. This a beautiful woman.
Isn't she gorgeous?
Isn't she gorgeous? That's it. I think that's one of the hardest things in the past year is, when you're referring to someone's Blackness, you're referring to their struggle, or if you're trying to go on a positive note, it's always, how have you overcome the struggle? And
all about your worth is related to your resilience.
Yeah. And not that, yes, I am resilient. My community is resilient. We're resilient people, but we're also just people. We're all just living our lives. And while, again, the oppression and the systemic racism and, all that stuff is, again, crucial and in a bigger picture, cultural type of way, on the individual level, we're human. We're existing. I don't live my life as a Black woman to outside people, yes, but who I see myself as I just see myself as Emoni. I don't see myself as, a Black woman who yada yada yada. You know what I'm saying?
You're a person navigating the world, and you have your own complex depths of how you see yourself, and there's so much more to you than the labels.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So the box series seems beautiful. I think that's a really lovely metaphor.
Thank you.
And I think that's really lovely. And on that note, the topic I actually wanted to talk to you about today, I told you a little bit about it before, but me and her had a conversation. It feels like ages ago now,
it really
but
does.
It's actually this year we had that conversation, and sometimes it feels like eons. It feels like eons ago. But we started talking about, I was going off about how some people are nurturers, and some people have this aspect where they take care of other people, and that's their sustenance. My mom is a nurse, and she's constantly taking care of other people, and that her self-worth is tied to her ability to do this for other people, and she gets sustenance from it, and it's where she finds her fulfillment. And even significant others who do acts of service, people who that's their love language, and that's how they navigate the world. And I have always been like, that's not me. I'm a creator. I put things out, and that is how I get my sustenance, is externalizing the internal and hoping that other people maybe along the line resonate with
hopefully
it.
You understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, exactly. And I talk about catharsis in my work all the time as if this emotional connection to artwork can provide emotional relief. but I never actually connected it to the idea of healing.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to talk to you about that today, and your kind of dynamic view. You convinced me. It's not often that I have a debate with someone over something like that, or you made a new connection for me between the idea that we can make art and it can be healing.
Yes.
I think that's really beautiful.
100%. And I think that so much of the healing from art has to do with the process of it. While yes, the end result can be healing, and you see the finished product, but it's you seeing the finished product, understanding everything that had to go into it, you know? I, you know, even just thinking about the pieces that I made of that little box series, like the second one that I made was one on femininity and my womanhood, essentially, and realizing, you know, just my, you know, I won't get too much into it, but, you know, my family dynamic and how, you know, that impacted what I think a woman should act like. And, you know, similar to like, oh, the 50s housewife, like women should be in the kitchen type of thing, and not, you know, necessarily that
but societal
exactly.
expectations of you.
Yeah.
In a similar way, like it's another box you have had to deal with, or another label that you exist within and other people perceive you as, and dealing with its relationship to
100%.
you as a actual well-rounded person.
Yeah.
And not because, you know, in PC culture, in modern times, the labels have helped us a lot, right?
Yeah.
Labels have helped us understand where people are, where people come from, and how people see themselves. But there's the societal aspect of what you're expected to be like because you identify as that, and then you using that to self-explore.
Yeah.
And there's always that push and pull between the two, right?
100%.
So do you think that the process, you say it's healing happens in the process, but do you also believe that healing happens for the viewer when they see? Is it about their level of understanding of the process? I'm just curious.
I think that actually you bring up a good point, because it was something I was thinking of recently. How, you know, no matter how much I tell someone about the process, they're never going to understand it exactly as I did. You know, they're never going to have the same exact healing experience.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
We wish.
Yeah, of course. But, you know, they're never going to have the same exact healing process as I'm going to have. So, I can hope that other people will heal from it as well. But I also think that, you know, with that also comes like a level of freedom. It gives people the freedom to heal with your work. It gives people the freedom to, you know, just like with anything, you know, you can resonate with it. It gives you the ability to check in with the art and see those things that you do resonate, recognize something in yourself that you might not have seen before, and it gives you the opportunity to heal something, I feel like.
Ironically, I'm almost, as we're talking about it, seeing it as the way we use labels to feel like we resonate with something and feel seen. We also do something similar with art, and obviously doing it with art is much different.
More complex.
But it's not for other people. You see a piece of artwork, you have a private experience with it, and when it resonates, maybe you learn something about how you feel about yourself, or how the emotion of the piece is making you feel in that moment, right? So I hope as well that people get healing from our work. I do so much of my work about dark or traumatic or heavy feelings, much more heavy feelings, and I don't think the work itself looks like heavy or emotionally dark, but I hope that when people see it, they feel the rawness of those emotions, and hopefully that brings catharsis, you know? I guess there's no way to speak on the behalf of the general public who views your art, but that conversation really got me thinking about the ability, okay, but how do I see my role as an artist now? What's my responsibility as an artist, knowing I'm capable of giving that to someone? Now, how do I view what I want to put out? Like, if I could spend time creating work that healed people, that seems like a great mission. Not that it has to be. That's another burden you would put on yourself to feel it's your responsibility.
Label yourself as a healer. It's another label.
Exactly. But to know that maybe you have the power to give that to someone, I think knowing it and thinking about it while you're making the work might be powerful in your...
Well, 100%. I mean, like, as a very spiritual woman, you know, I so firmly believe that the energy and the intention that you're putting into the work, I mean, you're talking about exploring some really dark matter when you're creating your pieces, and same with me, you know, and that's part of what makes it so healing, is because as you're creating it, you might have, you know, the concept, the general concept, but as you're creating it, you're starting to understand, you know, the smaller little symbols in that and what that means to you and your experience. And it quite literally is allowing you to heal. It's allowing you to dig deeper into those concepts and those feelings that you're having. And I think that, you know, no matter how far removed someone can be from understanding your intention behind the work, if you're putting that energy into it, like, I wholeheartedly believe that that's going to be received to some degree by the viewer, by your audience.
I definitely think we're both people who believe that objects hold their own energy, especially depending on where they come from, what they've been impacted in. 100%. You know, I showed you and Brandon at one of our sipping crates, like, how to make, like, a little baby sculpture. And just for fun, just to, like, see what we could do with it in such a short amount of time, but for fun. And you know, but medium, like what I use in my sculpture and where the actual material comes from, especially if it's the visible part of the sculpture, the outside, because I do so many layers, is so important for me. So, you know, do you feel like your medium plays into, like, the importance? Like, do you choose to make it in a certain medium depending on how you want it to impact people? Is that...
Ooh, that's a good question, Amber. I feel like 100%. That's one of the biggest differences in creating digitally versus with the painting for me. Not that, you know, people can't have a lot of meaning and energy put into their digital work, but it's not the way that I connect best with my work. And when I have my painting, I have the hands-on, I know exactly all of the layers. I can't erase anything. I can only go over it and it still exists under there. You know what I'm saying? And so, again, I'm talking about these two pieces, but in that small little box series I have, there's layers and layers and layers on those things. And it almost looks a little messy. It almost looks a little gross. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, aesthetically, probably not my best work, but there's just so much into it. And I think that that's what I like a lot about painting, is that I can paint something. There have been a couple of different pieces where I'll, like, write something underneath and just do the painting over it. And, like, that's my little secret with the work, but it's there, and it's there forever, whether other people can see it or not. And I think that that's kind of how I would use the medium to play into it. Whereas with digital, I really can't play around with it in the same way.
It's not and like, I've noticed some digital artists, like, edit their work after it's been printed out or physically existed too. And not that that's how digital work always works, but I think that's so on brand for you. the writing something underneath it, and having that intimate moment with your work highlights what we were talking about, but, like, the process heals us while we're making it. And I need that for my work. Absolutely.
Well, how often does the healer get to heal themselves? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's always just, like, one of that to me is what art is, because that's how I tend to be in my relationships, in you know, that's how I try to go about. I mean, no one can really see me right now. I have good omen tattooed on me, and I don't have that tattooed on me for me. I have it tattooed in this spot that I can't really see it. And people will say something, or you're a good omen, or, like, something like, you know, I have it there for other people because I want people to have that hope, and that, you know, I want to be that healing force, that healing catalyst for other people. But art for sure is, like, one of the most efficient ways to do healing for myself. It's not something I prioritize most of the time, and it's come so easily with the artistic process.
I'm a little taken aback, because I think that sounds like, to me, when you said, how often does the healer get to heal themselves? It sounds like a superpower. It does. It's because as we get older, as we mature, like, energy and time are finite resources.
Absolutely.
Are some of the most finite resources, and being capable of rejuvenating yourself and then continuing to give back or do the other things that you do, and using art to give yourself that life. But even funny enough, we make the art, it heals us, but then we have to take breaks. You know, you take this, of course, but the idea that, I heal from my artwork, and the people are like, well, didn't you just say you took a break? You took a break. And it's, okay, so there's a dichotomy or a back and forth between, yes, but I'm also taking energy to externalize something.
Yeah, well, 100%. I mean, the healing process, I mean, granted, yes, making the art is healing, but I feel like in so much of that process, it's not necessarily that it's fully healed afterwards. It's you just understand what needs to be healed. You have a better grip of kind of where your psyche and your spirit is at once you've created the piece, or, like, during the journey there. And then, you know, you need to take that break so you can process it, so that you can actually put some of the healing work in, because creating the template, you know, if that's what you want to call the artwork, creating the template for the healing is not the same as doing the healing. It's understanding the healing, but that's not the work that's required to actually, you know, make that change that you need.
I call it like heaving it out of your body, because sometimes creating that structure and then actually doing the work feels like you're like literally extracting something from your inner self, and like that's me and me being a spiritual woman. But like really this when I make the healing artwork, when I make artwork that's about something I'm feeling that's raw and emotional, I genuinely feel like I'm heaving emotions out of my body, and it lifts it off my shoulders and puts it out into the world. And I guess maybe that's why I have such a high hope that it heals other people, because I hope I'm not just taking this intense raw emotion and putting it out there just for other people to have to like bear the burden of it. I'm hoping that other people see that and feel seen from it, and understand that we're all trying to figure out how being human plays into this whole thing and moving forward.
100%.
I actually, while you were talking, was thinking about it almost as like maybe a triangle or like a square, where you only get to have so many sides, where there's like your spiritual self, your artistic self, your physical self, and your mental self.
100%.
And so when we talk about like I do the art and it heals me, but then like there's like a rubber band, it like snaps back, and then you have to take care of the physical. And we both talked about how the physical feels like a trap sometimes.
It does.
You know, a little astrological shout out there, but like I use it to identify. That is something, a label I use to identify being an air sign, to remind myself that I do get really caught up in my ideas as a visionary, as an artist. It's so easy for me to live like up here, and it is so much harder for me to be like, okay, but what is this me?
Like, what do I need to do right now? How is this body feeling?
And how is, because you ignore it for long enough and it will affect the work too.
And I think that's one of the beautiful things about art is it's you literally channeling everything that is up in the clouds and you're bringing it into the physical world. You have to actually acknowledge it as something other than, you know, a thought that you can throw onto the back burner in the midst of a million other thoughts that you have throughout the day. You know what I'm saying? It's, you're being quite literally forced to acknowledge it, and you talking about like, oh, is this me burdening other people? Strange in a way that there can be that feeling of like selfishness almost. We're like, oh, I'm gonna put this out and everyone has to deal with it. But I think, you know, that's just art, baby. It's the human condition. That's the human expression. That's what we're here to enjoy it for.
You know, we talked about everything that went on last year, and sometimes, it feels like my voice is loud, or that my voice isn't the one that needs to be heard. And I try to pay attention to like, am I really the person who has something good to say right now? And it doesn't always play into my work, right? Like, of course, I'm going to make my art for my healing process, for what I need. But there is an element of me that questions like, who other than me needs this? Like, what's its place in the world? Because like, and there's a responsibility that comes with creation. You're putting something into the world, and inherently this thing will be perceived by other people. And there's an act of responsibility knowing you're affecting other people. And how much you weigh that is really up to the individual, I'm sure. But I try to keep in mind when people see my work, is it going to give people a good experience? Is it going to leave them with something profound or well-deserved enough that it was worth seeing the artwork in the first place? And like I did a first rendition of an all red installation, and red is a really intense color. And I was very worried that people would walk into it and just feel daunted. Daunted by it overwhelmed or swathed in something so heavy you didn't want to be in the room. And that's not really what I want. I want it to be like, I want it to like bathe you. And I want it to allure you into feeling like maybe you're walking into a part of yourself. You know, this internal experience. I wanted it to feel like it wasn't a box. It's not a black box anymore. You are inside of something, and the red light creates an intimate moment. Red light for me is intimacy. It can be promiscuous. It can be sexy. Red can be anger. Red can be blood. And I started the series with the idea of blood, but then it turned into this exploration of red and how it impacts people. And it felt very on brand with how red the world was. The sky turned red in 2020.
Yes.
Lots of death in 2020. Lots of violence in 2020, and it felt
lots of anger in 2020.
And red felt like it touched on all of those things. And so, how could I take red and give a very specific one feeling with that, one that isn't any of those bad or negative things, but rather something that's comforting, like the inside of a heart, kind of like being
inside of the womb.
Yeah, really, like like inside the body, the internal landscape. I think that's.
I just got chills a little bit because, like, I've heard you talk about this, this installation that you're going to be doing. I've heard you talk about it so many times, but this is the first time I've sculpture to me is not something that I do. So it's always interesting to have a conversation with you about all of the thought that goes into it, because there's so many elements. Like granted, a painting or any other type of piece can be an experience, but with an installation, it's an all-consuming experience. It's not depending on where you're looking. It's entirely around you.
Yeah.
And the fact that you are trying to use the color red as something comforting and then also acknowledging a piece of work that's kind of dark.
Yeah.
At the same time, like almost a comfort, like allowing someone or encouraging someone to sit with those uncomfortable feelings in a way that's like, this is a comfortable, safe space to be, because this is, it's part of the human experience. You're going to have to deal with these emotions, and you might as well get comfortable. Right?
That's that big part of catharsis. And that's part of the reason I do the broken glass is there's a moment of like, life has really dark and uncomfortable moments. But in my opinion, that's what makes it so pretty.
Yes, so beautiful. We're just over here fangirling over sadness.
Really, but like I said, the word catharsis, and that's why I bring up that word, because that feels like the antithesis of like we're human, we have these uncomfortable, weird, strange feelings, and they do all sorts of stuff to us, and God isn't easy to stash it in a workout routine or a daily bad habit. Yeah. But like, isn't it so much more raw and so much more in the essence of being alive to like confront it and figure out where it comes from and interact with those parts of yourself. And I've been that kind of person who's always felt really comfortable with my shadow self. Or at least I felt like I have a better communication with my shadow self. And I don't know if many people feel that way, but at least with my artwork, there's always been this underlying talk about the human condition, because I think it's so much easier for me to understand or relate to. I feel like myself when I explore my shadow self. It's harder for me to see myself as this like rosy positive. Right. And so it shows in my artwork, and that's the part that helps heal me. That's the part I think, okay, if I'm comfortable with my shadow self and it seems so uncomfortable for some people, so much that people will build aspects of their lives around avoiding their shadows, then if I could use my artwork to make people feel like just because it's called your shadow doesn't mean it's like the dark isn't always scary.
100%. Well, I mean, I was actually, oh gosh, I'm gonna drop in another new project that I'm working on. So like I said, a very spiritual woman. I've been getting into tarot. I actually am planning on creating my own oracle deck right now. And so one of the
pre-order right now.
Everybody pre-order right now.
I will have to have one if you do it.
Absolutely. I just really started working on like going hard. I'm so passionate about it. But anyway, two of the cards that I've come up with, I've already done the art for them. I've already done like the explanations for them. Angels and demons. And I think that demons could also be representative of like the shadow self in a way. And I so much think that, our demons, like they're really scary, but if you look at them, they're somewhat like, for lack of a better term, naive versions of ourselves, because you're just not acknowledging them. Or at least for me, that's how I've worked. You said you're very in touch with your shadow self. It's newer for me. So I look at some of those like darker aspects that I have been avoiding. And also, like, I feel like so many of my art pieces have been little demons for me over the years, like having to sit with something really dark about myself. But realizing that so much of that stuff is like, oh my gosh, once you confront it, it's really not that freaking scary. Like, the feelings are deep and they hurt and we're all a little bit wounded, right? But it's really not quite as scary as we think. It's not worth avoiding, I think.
I think it's almost scarier because there's comfort in knowing yourself and avoiding your shadow self means there's a whole element of yourself you don't know. And it's very easy to fear what we don't know. And when it feels like I know it's there and I know there's all this emotion attached to it and you're like, I don't know what to do with all that. But then, as you do confront it, it takes time and there's a process involved. And whether you're an artist or not, there's all sorts of ways to confront knowing that other part of yourself that maybe doesn't feel as natural or as positive or as comfortable. But I've only found that making artwork about that part of myself has made me forgive myself. And that's a big element of healing, right? Is forgiving myself for having a darker side, for having dark thoughts, bad thoughts, things that you're not supposed to think, and recognizing like your brain fires like crazy. It goes off all the time. It is evolutionarily programmed to constantly think of every possibility. That's its job, to protect you, to keep you, to survive. And as an evolved person with a consciousness who's trying to navigate living in a world where we no longer need to survive in that way, I think it's only natural that we have this kind of these extra thoughts that don't feel right, especially according to society, right? And then also what's like permissible as a person, knowing that you're just trying to live and figure it out. And then also forgiving yourself for letting your brain go there, like having a thought and you're like, that was wrong.
Or I would even go like a step further in like a weird way. My relationship with my shadow self is like appreciating those parts of me. I'm actually a human. I'm a human. And it's also made it, I think that forgiveness and that appreciation of that part of myself has made it so much better for my interactions with other people too. Like, oh my gosh, like you have your shadow self too. Like, I don't know. And just forgiveness of other people. Like you've got these things, and also that level of understanding that comes with it. There are so many people that avoid it. And I don't know, just giving me like a level of patience once I recognize that, I had to extract those demons from me. It was a painful process. I can't tell you how many times I've like been hysterically crying while I'm painting and like.
But also that ties back into saying like it's like almost a naive version of ourselves where you're forgiving people or forgiving yourself for having the thoughts, but also recognizing that other people are acting from this naive or less evolved place, especially if it hasn't been explored yet. And understanding and having more patience for where other people are at in their life, where they're at emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and having more of a, not a barrier, but threshold for understanding and being patient with seeing where other people are at, recognizing it, and deciding how you want to interact with that. I think it really does improve your quality of interactions with other people. How could it not? Because when you're acting from your, naive place of being like a scared little lizard brain, and they are
you
too.
hurt someone else, like all you want is for someone to be like, oh, just understand, like, I'm not a bad person. I just, I just want someone to forgive this aspect. Like, I'm working on it. Okay.
But that kind of evolved thinking is good for interactions on a social level with our families, our mental health, the way we interact with our artwork, the way we interact at our job. Like think about how many
greater collective as a whole. Really.
And how much better off would we be as a society if everyone could have like just like a little dose of that, like understanding that those thoughts do not define you. I think one of my favorite quotes when I have thoughts that don't feel right is, the first thing you think is what you've been trained to believe, and the second thing you think is how you actually are, or what you really believe.
You actually believe.
And because I think we're all prone to having immediate judgments. Like your brain is trying to constantly figure out its reality as it unfolds in front of you, always, all the time. And that first immediate thought is your brain's way of being like, this is going to help. And then your second thought is like, okay,
we thought about it for a second. No,
that's not how it works. But exploring the shadow self, healing through externalization, healing through whatever medium is creative, whatever makes you heal. I think people heal in many ways. Art is just one of them, and that's ours. And having that moment only helps you get in touch and understand yourself in those moments. There's less moments of uncertainty. Like having those moments of self-doubt, it stops me from being like, who am I in those moments? And I go, I know who I am. I know what this thought was, and I know where its place is.
And I think that another huge, like, scary part of that could be the accountability. Because you have to look at it and be like, oh crap, like, this is who I am. This is where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
Like, this is really where I'm at. I can't live in any illusion of it anymore. Like, especially with the painting you finish, you're like, wow, that literally just came out of me. 100% came out of me. There's no denying that that's me.
I have that issue with my sculptures constantly. I look at them and I go like I remember being in the studio. I remember I see the videos of me making this thing, and I look at it its entirety, and it feels like a Frankenstein moment. Like, it is the monster, right? Like, I birthed this thing, and now it is separate from me somehow, even though I birthed it. And having that relationship with your creations, and also creations that come from the shadow place or come from your demons,
I just got chills.
is a big part of it. And I mean, it's important to do that, and I have to thank you for that realization that art is healing, that art heals us. Art has the ability to heal other people, whether it does or does not. Probably also has to do with their level of involvement, with how much time they actually give your work, right?
Yeah.
But, so those things stack together, and realizing it is where the power lies, I think.
100%.
Once you recognize the things that your externalization can do in the physical material realm that we all collectively experience, that's power for me. And it's hard to find power in a day and age like this. What we talked about, all those problems. It is, as women, and as people who are living in a time that's turbulent.
As creatives too. I mean, this is not the society that we're in is not value creatives.
We're not exactly top tier on the power structure.
Exactly.